Microsoft is draining an Arizona town's water supply for its AI. Could we just not do that? Thank you, The Bite. Really, sorry, thank you, Futurism.com. I really appreciate you hitting me up with this relatable, hip slang. Could we just, like, not? Massive Microsoft data center in Goodyear, Arizona is guzzling the desert town's water supply to support its cloud computing and AI efforts. It's like how every time you create one Bitcoin, it further drains the, you know, the Panama Canal Lake. Powering AI demands an incredible amount of energy. Cool. AI pulls enough electricity from data centers, they risk overheating, so to mitigate that risk, engineers use water to cool the servers back down. That is how that works, yeah. Why do they keep building these water-hungry facilities in the desert? You know what was one detail of Doom Eternal that I thought was really cool? Oh no, this was the original Doom 2016. When you get the chip for that AI and it's built in the Arctic, like when you warp over to the that AI that's been following you the whole time, and they built the facility at the, you know, North Pole or something. 2016 is not the original Doom. Not the original Doom. The original remake Doom. Shut up. I've played the Doom games, okay? Probably more than you have. All right? I beat them all on Nightmare. Get off my case. I beat a lot of them on Nightmare, okay? I didn't get to Doom 2. That's Doom Eternal? No, Doom Eternal is the one after Doom 2016. You mean Sam something? Samuel? I don't know. Whatever. The tall guy? No, that's a human brain in a machine. I'm talking about the AI. Vega. There we go. They built the facilities in Arizona because of its proximity to the California university system, but also wanted to be in the low-tax state of Arizona. The logic almost makes sense. Cost saving. No, Bosch, Doom was the scientist. Okay. According to The Atlantic, Microsoft has been incredibly shady about its Goodyear Center's water use, even redacting exact figures in city records on grounds that its water consumption is proprietary info. Oh, you love to see that. You love your high-tech computer and AI company redacting its water usage because it's proprietary. That, you love to see that. That doesn't raise any alarm bells. But in estimates commissioned by Microsoft itself, the 280-acre campus, which currently houses 2 buildings, is on track to host a third, would consume an annual 56 million gallons of drinking water once the final building is completed. Neat. Put that in perspective, per The Atlantic, that's approximately the amount that a total of 670 Goodyear families would consume in a year combined. Goodyear families? Oh, just the city of Goodyear, okay. It's a lot of water anywhere. It's especially material in a place like the southern Arizona Sonoran Desert. This isn't a crazy amount of water, 56 million gallons. I expected it to be more, but I guess they only have like 2 buildings up, you know? It's a lot for Arizona. Yeah, that's true. It's a shame that you can't use like seawater for this stuff, huh? You can, Taiwan does. What about the erosion of the minerals and stuff? I mean, there's a reason they use drinking water. They filter it. Well, then it's just they're filtering it into drinking water. Like, then they're still using drinking water. They're just filtering it on site. You can purify it, I guess. Purifying seawater is ungodly expensive. You can make seawater and drink water. No. Don't get into this, guys. Okay, seawater purification is ungodly energy intensive. The amount of energy that it takes to turn it's insanely energy expensive. It's insane. You have to be really, really careful with that. Why can't they use wastewater? Because then the poop would clog up the pipes. Why can't they recirculate it? Because the water's hot. If the water comes back hot, then it can't absorb more heat. You've got to vent the heat in the form of steam. If we can ever find a way to quickly disperse the thermal energy from purified water without actually steaming the water and do it like very efficiently, that'll be one of those like big breakthrough technologies that creates you know, like 1,000 new technologies from it. That would be some way of dispersing it efficiently. That's called a radiator. Yeah, I obviously mean something better than what we have now. It's called a heat exchanger. Oh my God. Yeah, you know what else disperses heat from hot water? Time, energy, physics, the universe. Obviously, I mean a way of dispersing it very quickly and efficiently. Not a goddamn radiator. Jesus, obviously. Use a heat. Vash, didn't you know there's already technology to allow heat from one material to enter into another and the heat goes away? It's called basic physics. It's called thermodynamics. Did you know that? Why can't they just blow on it really hard? Well, honestly, one of the big issues is just it takes an unbelievable amount of energy to heat up water. Water can carry a ton of thermal energy, you know? There are some liquids that can absorb basically none and just evaporate right away. That's one of the reasons why you use alcohol to clean things. When you use alcohol to clean like machine parts or whatever, it's not only because alcohol has different properties when it comes to like rust or conductivity or passing electrons for like the degradation of certain materials like steel or silicon or whatever, but also because alcohol just like evaporates off nothing, like ethanol. Whoosh, ethanol loves to whoosh, ethanol loves doing that. Maybe this is a dumb question, but why don't we build these facilities in naturally cool environments? We could, but a chatter earlier said that this is because of the proximity to the University of California system and also tax benefits. It would be pretty expensive to build a big thing up in like the Arctic, though I guess eventually it would just melt the Arctic, so they can just use mineral oil. Yeah, if it's effective. Mineral oil cooling is a real thing. In fact, mineral oil cooling is already how we cool our underground power lines. When we have power lines that run underneath the earth, you know how when power lines above the earth are carried by those big telephone poles that have the like big wires that are separated by a foot or so? So those wires are insulated with rubber, but rubber doesn't perfectly insulate for the amount of power running through those wires. So also, they're kept separate so that arcs of electricity don't jump between the wires. You know what I'm talking about, right? The big power cables up in the air? We've all seen them. Let me just make sure that everyone's on the same page. The reason these wires are kept separate is because even though the rubber insulates them to an extent, it doesn't do so perfectly, so you don't want the electricity to jump between them. But you can't always have these. Oftentimes these have to be built underground. So, I ask you, how do you put all these wires that are meant to be kept separate underground? Like, how do you keep the power from just like dispersing into the soil or from jumping to one another? Well, they all get collected into a big bundle and they get put in a pipe. And that pipe gets filled with highly insulative oil. The oil is far more insulative than the air out here, meaning that it's incredibly difficult for electricity to jump between the wires. And the oil serves a dual purpose as a heat sink. So basically what they do is they put a big pipe underground and they pump it full of that oil. And then they pump the oil in one direction to another. And they use heat sinks at these big facilities where they run the oil, they pump it out of the pipe and they cool it down and they pump it back in. And then they continue moving it around so that the heat, continues to get dispersed evenly throughout the entire system. How do you know so much? Because I watch Practical Engineering on YouTube. Great channel. Not an ad. How do you run power lines underground without grounding the current? Well, like I said, you bundle them together, then pump a pipe full of oil, and you put them in that pipe. And then they're insulated by the pipe and the oil and the rubber around the wires. Also a bunch of paper that gets wrapped around it. The paper has to be saturated with the oil. It's complicated. No, yeah, it was a pun. Well, you should know how I handle puns while I'm streaming. Yeah, if we could just use mineral oil, I mean, wouldn't that be far more expensive than just water? Initially, yes, but the point with the oil is that you could use other ways of dispersing the heat from the oil without it just evaporating. When you have water carry that heat, there are limits to how much heat water can carry before it starts to evaporate or expand. Like, water has certain properties that have to be taken into consideration. But if you're using the oil, you have the ability to sink that heat in different ways. I mean, I didn't actually read this article, but you know what? Let's see. How are you dispersing the heat? Advantage of mineral oil. Mineral oil has been used in immersion cooling because it is not hazardous and transfers heat almost as well as water, but doesn't conduct an electric charge. Yeah, see, this is why they use it as insulation. While mineral oil does not have the heat capacity of water, it still holds over 1,000 times more heat as air. So, like, it takes more thermal energy to heat water, the same volume of water up than it does mineral oil, but you can heat the mineral oil really, really, really hot in a way you can't with the water, if that makes any sense. Higher power densities than air cooling. The NSA immersion cooling systems can support loads of 30 kilowatts per rack with no special engineering. It's by weight, not by volume. Fine, by weight, by volume. The difference is the oil is a closed loop system, whereas the fresh water can cool, so reduce cooling loss. Okay, so let me explain it this way, okay? Like, think of it this way, okay? If you, let's say you have something that has a lot of heat in it, and you need to disperse that heat, okay? So thermodynamically, thermal energy will transfer faster when there is a greater difference between the two systems between which there's a transfer. To put it another way, if you touch your hand to something that's 10 degrees warmer than your hand, the transfer of thermal energy from the thing to your hand will be a lot slower than if it was 1,000 degrees warmer than your hand. The greater a difference there is in the temperature between the thing that it is that's touching and the thing that's touched, like the greater of a difference there is in temperature, the faster that energy will transfer, right? Now, water can only be heated up to such a point before you start having issues with its containment. Water does, after all, expand, pressurize, it becomes gas. Water gets excited when it gets too hot. Okay, many such cases. There are also issues you can have issues. Okay, mineral oil doesn't. All right, so imagine this. Imagine that you have water that's running through and it's cooling all of these computers, right? And the water gets like to 300 degrees, which is hot enough to burn your hand. Okay. Then, how do you vent the heat from that water? Well, the easiest way would just be to expose it to the air and allow it to turn into steam because, the hot water wants to turn into steam. If it turns into steam, it will cool the remaining water because only the hottest water will turn into steam. The average temperature of the heat will be, the average temperature of the water will lower, right? But the problem is, if you expose that water to air, what's the difference in temperature between the water and the air? Few hundred degrees, right? Like, few hundred? That's not that much. The mineral oil, however, can be heated to a potentially much higher temperature. It can take more heat in, and because it doesn't immediately boil away into steam, you can expose it to the air, which allows it to disperse more heat without losing volume. Does that make sense? Like, you could run the oil through, get that up to like maybe 400 degrees or whatever, and then when you expose that to air, you have the ability to remove that heat from the system in a way that doesn't involve the same kind of expansive or like steam production traits that water has. Therefore, it can be recycled. That's the problem. That's what cooling towers are at nuclear power plants. Those gigantic, scary, big towers that produce a bunch of big, billowing smoke of nuclear energy? Well, that's just steam. Regular, clean steam. You could go and bathe in that if you wanted to. I mean, you could go, like, run through that really fast and get, like, all misty. It's just regular water. All of this is just boiled water. That's the product of the nuclear engine. That's the reactors, that's what it's doing. The energy it produces is through this. Likewise, if you're reducing the heat from a system, anything that involves water, you're going to produce steam, which does mean you lose the water, of course. Yeah, spicy rocks. Anyway, does that make sense? Sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but whatever. It's just interesting how interesting it is. Critics furious Microsoft is training AI by sucking up water during drought. Look up oil cooling systems for subsystem transformers. They use oil where the heat convection drives the flow itself. You mean convection? Like the cycle of convection actually runs its own kind of like motor? That's cool. Oil cooling systems for subsystem transformers. Love to see that. Love to see wacky little stuff like that happening. See? Core windings in the radiator where the convection drives a loop right around here and fans blend. That's really cool. Yeah. Lots of nice natural solutions to regular engineering issues. Now I want to make more oil pipelines that have wires in them. Yeah, go for it. If you break one of those energy pipelines, the worst you'll do is knock out power because all the oil that would seep into the ground is just regular mineral oil. Vosh, the how do you know so much question was much needed. You don't talk enough about the channels and podcasts you listen to. Really? I feel like I talk about them quite a bit. I do not hide the fact. If you hear me say something interesting, it's probably because I heard it from another source that I trust, like, pretty recently. I mean, I don't, like, compile big lists, but honestly, I'm so unpopular in a lot of communities that I feel like they interpret my enjoyment of their content as a threat. So, Microsoft increased worldwide water consumption by a whopping 34% last year. Holy shit! Which outside researchers told the AP is most likely due to increased AI training. That's dwarfed by Google, which used 5.6 billion gallons last year, a 20% jump that's also likely attributable to machine learning. And you'll recall ChatGPT wasn't even publicly released until the end of November. With AI use spiking enormously this year, so those figures are likely only the tip of the iceberg. Cool. Wow, cool. That's all even more worrisome in the context of a 2021 study spearheaded by Virginia Tech researchers, which found many American data centers depend on stressed water system. Even states like lush Florida face a predicament because the water footprint of data centers is so large that they have the potential to put pressure on local watersheds, Virginia Tech researcher MD Abu Bakar Sadiq told Futurism. Iowa's water system is very stressed. West Des Moines residents have even been complaining the taste of the local water has been deteriorating. They're giving all the good water to ChatGPT, wrote one Redditor. I trust that source. Water pumped into data centers often evaporates after cooling the facilities or ends up as blowdown, which is a thick, briny wastewater that needs to be treated, definitely not ready to be easily recycled back into the local water supply. Blowdown. Okay, this is from NPR. This is a large office building. Salty wastewater known as blowdown that has to be treated by local utilities. Okay. Recently said it looked at 122 companies that operate data centers and found just 16% had disclosed information about their plans for managing wastewater risks. Yeesh. I guess we'll see how this all goes. All told, a mid-sized data center consumes about 300,000 gallons of water a day, or just as much as 1,000 U.S. households. I think the main problem here, or a lot of it stems from a Christian attitude towards domain over the earth. Like, this varies a lot. Like, the logic of capitalism is consistent worldwide, but culturally, I really do think a lot of Americans think that resources are infinite. That, like, God gave stewardship of the earth to man, and that all of the bounties on this earth are man's to take advantage of, you know? Because it genuinely seems like a lot of Americans don't understand the concept of water or power being finite, of these being finite resources in a finite system, that everything is being, like, it's not just a matter of like, oh, the US is bad at sustainability, because every country is, right? But it's more like a lot of Americans don't seem to understand that sustainability is a thing. I think if you talk to like a lot of people in a country like India or China or Japan, they would definitely say dumb stuff when it comes to sustainability, but I think that like they would still acknowledge the concept of sustainability being a valuable thing. Does that make any sense? Like, they would, even if they set the bar in the wrong place or they were inconsistent in their application of that belief, they would still believe in the concept of sustainability. I don't think Americans do, or at least not a lot of Americans. I think that a lot of conservative Christian Americans, like it's that idea that oil is infinite, you know? Like the idea that oil is like an infinite resource in the earth. I don't think a lot of people understand. Us natural resource managers call the unlimited resources philosophy utilitarianism lol. Got really confused when you talked about utilitarianism as a moral framework. Oh yeah, different term, or different use for the term. Yeah, you're right. Even the right wing in places like Japan and India are at least aware the environmental sustainability is a thing and sometimes have to engage with it for industrialization regions. Yeah, I don't know. It's just Vosh totally right. I remember in churches and conservative talking growing up mocking the idea of peak oil. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. The idea of us ever reaching a point where we cannot access as much oil as what we could before was a joke and still is a joke to conservatives. Not just in the idea of like, we're nowhere near peak oil, but they don't think there is such a thing as peak oil. A lot of them legitimately seem to believe that oil is an infinite resource that you can always get more of. Like, it's baffling. I don't understand it. It has to be like a divine... Maybe they're right. Did you guys see that helium news? Helium discovered in Minnesota as U.S. supplies dwindle. We're running low on helium, and the divine mandate, it reaches down and shut up. What's making noise? Stop. And the divine mandate gives us more. The team encountered gases with concentrations of up to 12.4% helium when its drilling rig reached a total depth of 2,200 at the Topaz Project drill site. Helium concentrations above 0.3% are considered economically viable. God damn, dude. So this is 41 times economic viability when it comes to helium density. Vosh, you are sounding like those rights of nature people who say we need a cultural shift away from the Judeo-Christian great chain of being, dominion over nature. It's not even like a weird spiritualism thing. We are objectively part of nature. And I don't even mean that in some like hippie tree-hugging way. I mean like the stuff that we do influences the environment and the environment influences the stuff we can do. And that's just a fact of the universe. That's not like a hippy-dippy thing. That's just like the universe. It's just the way everything works, obviously. And humans understood this for most of time, even during the more like arrogant eras of like, I don't know, Christendom, when it came to dominion over the earth. People had to practice at least some degree of sustainability because we weren't capable yet of distancing ourselves enough from the mode of production for people to ignore it, you know? People still lived on their farms. Serfs lived on their farms. There had to be some practice, some thought given to it. But nowadays, I think a lot of people just don't believe in it. They don't believe in it. Is this a Protestant thing? No, no. It's an Abrahamic religion thing. I'm pretty sure it's the same to an extent in Islam, right? Ultimately, this comes. I think this is a problem with the belief in like a single divine all powerful God. This is like a a monotheism thing to an extent, because pantheist religions have a tendency to like this is the god of like forests or whatever. I think maybe it encourages a slightly more broad perspective on the environment and its relationship. That probably varies though. It could just be religion. It's probably like all I know is that this attitude is a cultural thing and it does change area to area, right? Like probably Shintoism has to have a better attitude towards this because you think that like whenever you're pissing in the local river, there's like a water dragon that'll kill you if if your piss is too yellow and you disrespect it that much. I don't know. It's explicitly Abrahamic. The Adam and Eve story specifically says that God made the world for man to use. Yeah. A lot of religions say that to some extent or another, but that's not pantheism, it's polytheism. Oh, sorry, polytheism. I said pantheism, didn't I? No, polytheism is what I meant to say, sorry. As much as I hate religion, this one's just capitalism. No, it's also a cultural thing. Like, culture still exists. There's not no culture. Capitalism is a sort of mode of production, but, it's always influenced by local traditions and attitudes.